Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Joe Zaragoza from Convo Maintenance. I am the founder and owner of Convo Maintenance, and I'm here with our director of training, Chamberlin, and we're going to talk about the benefits of an A&P certificate while you're serving. And I want to introduce you to Dave Chamberlain, let him talk about his background and his experience so far of being an A&P during his service. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, hi everybody. So I started my career back in the mid-1970s and went to A&P school. As far as the military goes, I was born on an Air Force base, and my dad was a crew chief, and my grandfather was a crew chief in World War II, so it sort of runs in the family. But I started A&P school and then eventually ended up after working out of the trunk of my car for quite a while in Colorado. My wife convinced me to go in the military, so I ended up becoming a crew chief in the Air Force. Ended up teaching at Shepherd for 4 years, and then moved on from that to the Air National Guard. Spent 38 years in the military. Retired as I say, an E9, because it's the people I work for that actually get to determine whether I was a chief or not. But retired as a chief with an A-10 unit. But in the middle of all of that, did a whole lot of other things within the industry, working for airlines, Part 135 operators, FBOs, working for manufacturers such as Rolls-Royce and Raytheon. Taught for Embry-Riddle for a number of years, also on the side, and got a master's degree with them and a bachelor's degree in education. Technical training instructor in the Air Force. So my background sort of runs a whole gamut of training and maintenance, both in the civilian world and in the military world.
A&Ps, even in my own experience, where when I was trying to pursue the A&P, one of my last supervisors in the military told me that why are we going to spend money on you while you're about to get out? And it's kind of common across, at least in the online stuff, where a bunch of people are saying that, right, especially leadership, are talking about how why we're going to give our technicians an A&P and they can use that when they get out, and we're going to be even more shortage of technicians. And that's what sprung up this conversation, this topic for the day, of having your crew chiefs, or maybe an avionics guy, having his A&P, or at least his airframe rating. And that's the big topic of the day. And I think there's more of an upside of having an A&P crew chief or avionics or electrician than it is not having them get their certification. And we talked about a little bit today, and throughout this time since you've been here. So I wanted to get your thoughts, as being in an E9 and been in the military for quite a while. What do you think the benefits are of being an A&P during your service?
Yeah, so one of the big things is, and this has been going on for years, is the topic of morale. And I mean, how many years have we in the Air Force been talking and saying, how can we help with the morale of the troops? And we come up with these different programs, and people, I think, try to do their best with that, but in a lot of cases there's sort of a short-lived sort of thing. You have a family day or whatever it happens to be, or an awards program. Those things sort of just only last for the day or two that it's going on. But if you look at in the civilian world, one of the things that they say that when they survey employees and ask them about what sort of things increase your morale and your happiness with your job, a lot of them say it's additional training. And it certainly holds true that people want to be invested in. And so from the military standpoint, you look at yourself, and if you got a degree, a bachelor's degree, or any sort of special certification during your time in the military, whatever it might have happened to have been, I went to the MRM course and became an MRM. I don't remember what, level 2 instructor, I think is what it was, which meant that you could go teach other people the MRM course. That meant a lot to me, that I was chosen not only to go to the MRM course, but then I became the level 2 instructor to go along with it. And that lasted for a long time with me. So if you want to do something positive towards people's morale, you can say, hey, I do want you to get your A&P license or your A license or your P license or whichever one it is, because they will see that you are invested in them. So I mean, that's morale is one of the first big things, and it has that lasting effect because since it is a lifetime license, you walk away with that. And what that does too is, in a certain respect, it puts you above your peers.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not something you lord over them, but certainly you're going to be, you know, a little bit better trained than what they are.
Right.
Another reason I think to do it is just the fact that we talk in the military too all the time about people being well-rounded.
Right.
Well, in some cases, things are so specialized, especially in the aircraft maintenance career field. And you look at the times that we've done things like rivet workforce and cross training and cut training and all of these different programs we've done within the maintenance force to try to get people experience in these other areas, so that when a crunch happens, or let's say you're deployed and, you know, a couple people fall out in one of the shops, then you've got a way to at least someone to kind of lend a hand if you've got some extra manpower from the other side. So this is just another sort of fork on the triad, if you want to call it that, of a way of having people having more experience. The other thing it does too is there's times, especially as you increase up through management, it gives you a broader perspective on, let's say, some things that they're doing in the civilian world, especially if you've got people in your organization that are working part-time jobs out in the civilian market in aviation. You look at the number of programs and plans that have come into the Air Force from the civilian world, and over my 38 years, I saw a whole ton of them. So a lot of them came and a lot of them went, but there's still always pieces of those programs that have a tendency to kind of stick around, and there's incremental improvements that happen because of things. And if you don't have those people out in that civilian world and you're all insulated within just the military in our own little world, you don't get that. And so those people that get that training and have that contact, they can ask questions and say things like, hey, is in the civil world, we don't pre-flight an airliner every single day. We don't look at the airplane from tip to tail every single day. Is there a reason why we're doing it in the military? And yes, there may be reasons that we do that, but there's still, it's good to question things, and it's good to say, why? Is there a better way? And you can get that extra experience from that. And on top of it, it's going to help you just as with the experience level of the people that you have working for you.
Yeah.
They're going to have this other broad range of experience in other areas on the airplane that they can apply. And I can't tell you how many times I've known guys that specialists came out and they said, well, we don't know what's going on here. This doesn't
That's when they
seem
come
right.
out on a timely way.
Yeah, well,
She will
don't have to go back.
Come check it out
Right.
after waiting for 2 hours.
Right.
And then they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go back to my shop. Oh, wait, it's turnover time now. And, and all you're looking for is just to get screws getting drilled out. And in A&P, you learn to drill out rivets and things
Sure.
like that. And you can at least prep it for them.
And if a commander had the inclination to do it,
Yeah.
you could do things like allow your mechanic, your crew chiefs to use a Johnson bar to get screws out. I mean, if they can show the sheet metal guys that they know how to do it and do it correctly, well, why waste the time waiting for them to go get all their stuff? You might have a flight line box that has some of your basic sheet metal tools there, and you can do that work right then and there. I had an instance where on my 16, one of I think it was a canopy unsafe peanut light bulb was burned out, and it all got written up, and I'm like, okay, it's the end of the day. I already had the airplane basically put to bed, and we're waiting for electric shop to come out. Well, I won't say this officially. I didn't have a peanut bulb in my pocket, but I had a peanut bulb, and I popped out the indicator, and I put the peanut bulb in and pushed it back in, powered up the airplane real quick. The light worked fine. It's like, okay, I'll go in and I'll go sign off the forms. And as I'm, walking back to the line shack, here comes the electric shop with all their gear and everything else, a big roll around cart and stuff. And I'm like, where are you guys going? And they go, we're going to 261. And I said, what for? And they said, well, to fix this light bulb. And I said, well, it's already fixed. And they said, well, how did that get fixed? And I said, well, I fixed it. And they said, you can't do that. And I said, well, okay, go on out there, power it up, pull the bulb out, turn the switch on and see if it works okay. I mean, when you think of those things and how many times in the Air Force that happens over the course of a year, how many labor hours are we spending having
or waiting,
whatever it happens
downtime,
to be, for people to do these very basic things that other people could be doing. And an A&P license is at least going to give you the training to say, I can do some of these basic things.
A multimeter to check, the pins in the camo plug, if they're doing landing gear safety checks or landing gear ops checks, and and we believe that maybe a switch is bad, we can ops check that. We can check it with a multimeter, and as an A&P, that's some of the stuff that we train guys to use their multimeter, because we don't want them to blow up their multimeter either. But also ensure that they pass their exams in basic electricity. And some of the stuff is some basic stuff like that where we wait for E&E. Nothing against E&E. It's just some of us are the type that we want to just get the job done, feel accomplished that we we were able to do it within our shift, and we can give a good plane back to the next shift or whoever's gonna take over. Instead of it, I always feel shitty when I give a turnover and I have to tell him we're waiting on specs, or we're waiting on avionics, or we're waiting on E&E, or we're waiting on sheet metal, and those things that I can't. So many times I waited in the flight line waiting for these shops to come out. And that's an impact on morale too. Yeah, it is. Because we want to get the job done, and we want to go have coffee or Coke or whatever it happens to be, or it might be the end of the day, and you can go home, and here you're sitting here waiting for an hour and a half when you could be home with your family. Even just the feeling of accomplishment for the day. Yeah, that feels great to me. Like, we can just sit and give the excuse that, hey, I just been waiting here. I can't do my job. And you just pawn it off. And that's true in the cases because you're not signing off to do certain tasks. But if that was changed, a job can be done. And like you said, the morale where, part of it can be just the feeling of accomplishment. Something like that you can easily be taught how to use a multimeter or even drill out rivets. And I see that as a benefit if, you go through an A&P course, even a prep course where they teach you to drill out rivets and install rivets and using Cherry Max or Cherry Logs, whoever, depending on who you talk to. Those things are, it would make me feel good. And the thing too is that, back in the day, and I'm old guy, so I say back in the day, you had to wait for the specialists in some respects because you had to wait for them to bring the TOs because they were paper TOs. And so you didn't have a TO to do the work. And I'm certainly not advocating working on the plane without having the TO with you and open into the right page. But now with so many of them being electronic and on a smart device, then you have access or can have access to all the TOs.
So there's no reason why you couldn't open to the page
it's at your hands
to
now.
disconnect this cannon plug and follow the steps. Because honestly, so much of what we do is not rocket science that you need some specialized in-depth training. It's all very similar. Make the aircraft safe for maintenance, pull the power off, pull this breaker, pull that breaker, set this switch to this, disconnect the cannon plug, read between these two pins. Virtually anybody can do that with just a basic little bit of training. And then it does make you feel accomplished, because that's, especially for crew chiefs, what do we like as crew chiefs? We like our airplanes back code 1 as quickly as possible and ready to fly again. And if we're the biggest portion of making that happen, then we feel good about ourselves, instead of having to wait on all these other people to do jobs that we could have done but just weren't allowed to.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Some of the crew chiefs who come in, heavy crew chiefs are a little better about it, but fighter crew chiefs they lack the basic electricity skills, because they're always at home, or wherever they're at, and the specs is right there. From what I understand, I've never been a heavy crew chief, but what I've been told repeatedly by them is that when you go TDY, you take a small crew, and the chances of you going TDY with your aircraft is that a lot about all systems, or if not, all the systems. So you're a jet mechanic, you're an electrician, you're an avionics guy, and on top of that, you're a crew chief. And I wish that same concept would go into the crew chief or the fighter world as well, because we experience some of the same issues, even though we're in that same spot, but we're so far away from, say, a support or tool bench or tool parts bench, and that's the back and forth travel alone is just time wasted. When they can just check certain things, having our multimeter in there, a simple drill kit, because if we're going to be taking out some of these high stress panels, that's going to be tough to take out. Most likely you're going to have a strip screw, and you're going to have to take off that engine panel off of 16, or the ventral panel, where it's always tough. It's always you're going to get at least one stuck screw. You're going to call specs. And as far as on the job part, stuck screws, checking cannon plugs or switches, and just the basic use of a multimeter will make a world of a difference. So when specs do come out, you can tell them, hey, this pin was bad, or I fixed the grounding. The switch wasn't grounded correctly. The wires were crossed, or something like that. And I see it in even civilian world where wires were crossed. But the simple fix that, instead of just waiting for specs just to reverse the wires, that's instant fix right there.
Well, and we do have to think too about things like logistics footprint, and the current thing in the DoD is, how can we do more with less? Which I guess is not current. It's always kind of been that way. But it's how do we do more with less? Well, one way you do more with less is if you've got crew chiefs that are more broadly trained in some areas, then when you do have to deploy someplace, maybe you don't have to take as many specialists with you, because let's face it, a lot of times on deployments, when you go, where are the specialists anyway?
That's right.
A lot of times they're in the truck, or they're back in their shack, and they're playing Dungeons & Dragons or whatever it is they happen to be playing at the time. They're going to
say, they were like, well, crew chiefs do the same thing.
I know, and I'm not putting down. That's the banner that goes back and forth, and we all know that. But the fact is that unless there's something wrong with the jet, then they're not out there. And crew chiefs are out with the jet whether it's good or bad. And so maybe you can reduce your logistics footprint by taking fewer specialists, because you've got people who are trained to do some of these more grunt work type things on the airplanes that you don't have to call the specialists out for. So that just makes you more effective, because you can cover more areas at once with the same number of people.
Yeah, definitely. And let's see, some other benefits. One is a lifetime certificate.
Yeah.
So you can always you can find a great job. I know the conditions of the aviation industry, at least for commercial airliners, but pretty much every other sector is pretty well. And by the time some of these guys transition out, that certificate is still good. It's lifetime, and jump into a great paying job. As soon as they transition out, and they it's a great thing to have when you separate.
I mean that kind of goes with that a degree and everything else, because let's face it, everybody who's in the military, whether you're a first termer or whether you're year 38, all the time you're thinking about what am I going to do when I get out.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's some guys who say, yeah, I'm going to get a lazy boy and I'm going to sit by the creek and I'm going to fish until I die. And there's some guys like that, but most people are not that way. Most people are thinking...
They're not set up that way.
Yeah.
They didn't set themselves up financially to go golfing every day or go fishing every day.
Right.
It's rare that I've met somebody that's prepared at 38 years old that are financially stable like that. It's rare. It's very rare. I've met some guys like that.
Yeah, because they're just thinking in terms of here's what my retirement's going to be, and that's kind of as far as they think.
Right.
But there's and everybody understands this, that especially if you get up in the NCO ranks, in the officer ranks to a certain degree, a lot of them are thinking about, I'm going to go work as a contractor someplace. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to go work as a contractor in maintenance, a lot of those contractors, you don't necessarily have to have an A&P license, but if you want to move up as a supervisor or lead, then you have to. Or if you want to go in the contracting world like where I was at for a while out at Wright Pat. A lot of the people that worked at Wright Pat were all contractors, and a lot of those jobs that you get, even though you're not ever turning a wrench again, they have an A&P license as a basic prerequisite for the job, or in some cases, that will put you above everybody else. Mm-hmm. Now, most of my life with my A&P license has been working, a lot of it's been working in managerial things where I never had to sign a logbook.
Right.
And yet it was a prerequisite for what I did. So that investment in people is something for them for when they leave, and that still then boosts their morale now.
Right.
Because they know, hey, when I retire, not necessarily that I'm going to get out as soon as I get my A&P, but when I retire, I've got this with all these other credentials that I've got that's going to help me in my life after the military. And in fact, if you're going to work as a military contractor, what are you doing? You're back supporting the military again. So if you help your people get their A&P licenses now, you're supporting the future military by helping to have more qualified people maintaining those airplanes. And certainly if I'm a pilot and I got a contractor, that's taking care of my airplane, I want him to be a really good qualified mechanic taking care of my airplane.
Yeah. I was reading this report by the Government Accountability Office, and they did a study that only 10% of their newly A&P certificates from 2015 to 2018 were veterans. And I think that, let me go back a little bit. And 62% were people coming out of the community colleges, the technical colleges, the aviation, what they call is Part 147. No experience, zero, but 62% are the newly certificated A&Ps, and only 10% is military. And it just blows my mind that not a lot of them are trying to pick up military. They have the experience, they know the grunt work of it, and maybe that's the mentality where people think that, I can go get a government job or a contracting job, and that's where everybody goes to. But there's tons of opportunities outside of the government contracting world. I know there's DynCorp and things like that. They don't need A&Ps, but we were talking about cargo companies like UPS and FedEx, and last time I checked, those guys start at nearly six figures, if not. I think FedEx even starts over six figures. I think it's 106,000 for new MP just to start. and they get all kinds of benefits too, and really good benefits that they've worked out with the union. But yeah, I mean, just outside the government contract, there's helicopter maintenance. I know the what is it called? The customs, the border patrol. Working on helicopters. They don't care if you have zero experience in helicopters. They'll take you because you have an A&P. And those guys, the ones on base, start off here at Davis Mountain. They start off at, I want to say, 35 an hour, 30 to 35 an hour, and that's pretty good. And you get benefits and things like that, and you still go TDYs and all that, fun stuff. So outside just government contractors, I believe there's tons of opportunities in the A&P world, or not A&P world, but in the aviation industry. And I think having an A&P, even though it doesn't require you to have it, it's just going to set you above, somebody without it.
Yeah, and the other thing that happens too, which a lot of people maybe don't think about, is that if you help someone get their A&P license while they're in, and then they get out, and let's say they're second termer and they leave and they get out and they've got their A&P, and you've still got another 15, 20 years maybe left in the military, and then you get out and go looking for a job. It happens quite frequently that people go look for jobs and they end up interviewing with the person that they worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're walking into this office and it's like, oh, you're Staff Sergeant Jones? Didn't you used to work for me? And the guy goes, yeah, well, now I'm a director of maintenance here at this airline. Mm-hmm. And oh, so you want a job? Yeah, well, you were my boss. Well, you know what? If you help that guy get his A&P license, how do you think he's going to think about hiring you when you apply for the job, because you helped him get his A&P license? I mean, there's the aviation, we know in the military, all you got to do is ask 3 people and you can find out about any military maintainer that you want to out there. And the civil world is exactly the same way. It's a very small place.
Right.
And I've been places before and walked in and they said, oh, hey, Airman Chamberlin. I haven't been called that in eons. Yeah. And turn around and it's some guy that I taught in school, and I barely remembered the person, but he remembered me.
Right.
So helping people with this is in your benefit, because you never know how it's going to turn. I've had people that work for me that I ended up working for them, and vice versa, because of the way just the ebb and flow of the business. So it can benefit you in many ways, and maybe not even getting you a job, but maybe you've got a friend that needs a job and you help so-and-so get their job, and now you know that they're the DOM at whatever regional airline. Right. You call them up and say, hey, I got a buddy that needs a job. Can you help him out?
Yeah. And there's a common saying with an A&P that, what is it? It's a license to learn.
Right.
So if you're working on fighter jets or small, like a UC-35 or C-12, those can translate to a business jet.
Yeah.
And I spoke with Bombardier maintenance managers, and they love to talk to our ATN guys because, one, they use practically the same engine, and the size of the aircraft is about the size of a business jet.
Right.
I'm not familiar with their aircraft, CRJ 700s or some stuff like that. But they love our A-10 guys and fighter guys because it's very similar.
Right.
The size of it, some of the engines are pretty much the same, and so even if you're a fighter jet and you want to work on a cargo airplane, they'll take you. I have friends who work for Southwest, and they were F-16 crew chiefs. And hopefully I can bring him on here soon and talk about that, how his path for that. But the other benefit, I believe, while you're still in is you get 30 semester credits?
30 credits towards your CCA.
Yeah. So 30 credits, I mean, what is it? And you have to have 60. So you're almost much
halfway there.
Almost done with just an A&P
to
get your CCAF.
Right.
in associates.
Right.
So that's another big added benefit to add to your education EPR. The education bullet for your EPR.
Yeah, one of the other things too is that, and I've been involved in enough of this to see the students that come out of A&P schools and what sort of caliber they are, and then the caliber of your average military aircraft maintainer.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had a company, I would much rather have a company of former military guys working on my airplanes
Mm-hmm.
than I would a bunch of the kids that are coming out of A&P schools. And don't get me wrong, there's some good ones there, but the work ethic is just so totally different. With a lot of them, it's like, what, you mean I've got to work a couple extra hours to do this? And with a military maintainer, if you tell them their shift is done after they've been on for 11 hours, they think that you're mad at them.
Yeah.
Because, you don't want me working here anymore? It's like, no, dude, you've already been here for a long time.
Yeah.
But the others, it's like, well, what time's our break? Oh, I only get 15 minutes of break. Why don't I get 15 minutes? What do you mean I have to put my lunch down because there's an airplane being pulled into the hangar? Yeah. Military guys are not that way.
Yeah, mentality is different for sure.
And so, what do you want to put out for the people that are working on the airplanes that you're flying on from point A to point B when you have to go to a conference?
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather, much rather it be a bunch of vets than a bunch of guys straight out of A&P school that went to school because mommy and daddy told them that they had to get out of the basement.
Right. The mentality in the military is like, all right, we're gonna stay like that illegally what we can do.
Right.
12, 15 hours, whatever. I knew before they started harping on hardcore on the 12-hour shift type deal. If we knew that the job needed to be done, we will stay there, legally as long as possible to get the job done. And I remember, I don't know if you remember the story I was telling you about the issue even with my own car, going to a mechanic shop. They only worked the 8 hours,
right?
And there was a deadline. He kept pushing that deadline. He pushed it twice. But that's because they were only working 8 hours a day. And that's all he's going to do.
Right.
And my mentality was, why didn't they stay as long as possible to get the job done on time?
Right.
And you see that a lot on the outside of the mentality is completely different.
Right.
Me, I tell you, the deadline is, a week from now, and if we're not on schedule, we're not on time to complete it on this deadline, we're gonna work after hours. We're gonna work 12, 15 hours to make sure that we, stick to our word that this is gonna be done.
Right. And I've seen former military guys in airlines when there was a problem going on, and HR says, you can't work past this time. Everybody has to punch out. Mm-hmm. I've seen guys punch out and then come back in the back door and go back over to the airplane and get it fixed and then go home. Shift is legal, but probably they're also not actually out there ranching on an airplane 24 hours. They're probably waiting on airplanes to come in.
Right.
A lot of cases they're sitting in a break room relaxing during the times while the airplanes are out flying.
24-hour shift, that's tough.
Yeah.
That is tough.
Yeah.
I tried to do that one time just driving alone. I'm not even really wrenching.
Right.
On a same boring road, 24 hours is tough.
Oh, yeah.
Can't even imagine, how fatigued you would be after a shift like that.
Yeah. And there's a whole thing with the FAA with human factors and stuff like that. And, you wouldn't ever want to have anybody actually working for 24 hours straight on a problem. You really do have to give them, even when I worked maintenance control on the civilian side, I would take my mechanics and make them go to bed for at least a couple of hours and get some sleep because it was just they would make too many mistakes.
All right, I think we're pretty much those are the big things. The education part while you're still in. It's a lifetime certificate that's going to let you, after your career in the military, there's opportunities for you to get out. Even more opportunities if you left without it. I can't imagine how many times, I know I've heard so many times they talk about, I wish I would have gotten it when I left, before I transitioned out. And then just the morale, having a better work center of having a crew chief office or a spec office full of A&Ps.
Well, and too, if I was a commander or superintendent or whatever, I'd be. I mean, let's face it. There's lots of stats that get tracked and pushed up the line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, if I was in command of a fighter wing, I think if I had 30% of my crew chiefs that I had helped them get their A&P license during the past year and a half, I'd be promoting that up the line.
Yeah.
I'd be making a big deal out of that.
Yeah.
I'd be going to the other base commanders and saying, "Hey, look at what we did! Ha ha ha! You can have beat that."
Yeah.
And I mean, because the Air Force revolves kind of on stats with lots of things. So
Yeah.
why not? Why not capitalize on that?
Right. We all want to see results.
Yeah.
And so I can't knock on the stats and all this stuff, people chasing stats and things like that, but I mean that's a way to measure success or to measure performance of something is the results.
Right.
And if your maintenance technicians are saving so much time and enjoying doing their work, why not take that step?
Yeah.
So I'm the same way. If I was a squadron commander or even a flight chief, I want my technicians to be badass.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not an A&P, but going to those extra courses like blade blending,
Mm-hmm.
boroscoping, or jumping onto. I remember there was an engine course, and there was like a 2-week course of TF-34s, and I jumped on it, but they didn't let me go because I was so close on separating. Mm-hmm. But even when I was separating, I still wanted to learn. Right. I wanted to jump on and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, doing external tank inspection and certification, and
mm-hmm.
Even helping to build bombs. I mean,
yeah, that'd be cool.
I've done that.